Good morning. Welcome to another installment of our virtual seminar Grove. I'm very excited that we've got some great guests for you today, and you're going to love this conversation. We are brought today by our wonderful sponsors, Cedar City and Bryan Head Tourism Bureau, and we're grateful for their sponsorship. And I'm joined by our production manager, Richard Girtain. Richard, who do we have today, and what are we going to be talking about?
Thanks, Michael. Yeah, I'm Richard. I'm the production manager here at the festival. We are talking about the stage crew today. These are folks that make everything happen. They have all kinds of different skills. Without them, we would literally not be able to put the show on. These are some of the most important people in production, and yet most of the time they're trying to hide from us, so we don't see that they're there doing all this work because we want that magic to happen. So today we have three amazing guests from three very different periods of time in the festival's production history. So I think you're going to learn a lot today, and I'm really excited to talk to each of these folks. We're going to take a minute and sort of learn about each of them, their background, and then we're going to, talk about some questions. Just remember, you can put questions in on Facebook, and we'll answer those towards the end of the hour. First off, Chee Lee, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your work history and what you've done here at the festival?
Hi, my name's Chee Lee. I went to school in northern Wisconsin at the University of Superior up here, and up there I got a degree in theater, and I can't remember if it's still part of the program anymore because it's been that long. They have since been closing down some of their art sections of the school, so I don't remember that. And then I came to USF in 2007. I'm currently working on the road now as a road flyman. I tour Broadway shows now 90% of the year.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you. Kate, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, I'm Kate. I went to school at the University of North Carolina School of the Arts, studying scenic design and props. I started in high school learning about theater and from a young age. And so I've always really loved theater. My positions at USF, my first year was in 2016, and I was a props intern and part of the run crew. And in 2017, I was a junior props artisan and also on run crew. And my third year, I was the run crew chief. And so I was in charge of everybody I had been once, so that was fun. And now I work at Dallas Stage Scenery. I'm a designer / props master and buyer, and I am also a project supervisor some of the time. But all my experience at USF has really helped me here, so I'm grateful for that.
Awesome. Thanks, Kate. Ben, tell us about yourself.
Hi, I'm Ben Alexander. I got my undergraduate degree from the University of Evansville in Indiana, BFA there. I have an MFA from Southern Illinois University Carbon. Currently, I am teaching at Northern Arizona University. I teach lighting, design, sound design, media design, stage management. I wear a lot of hats. I worked at USF from, I think it was 95 through to like 2006, I think. It was a long time, 11, 12 years there. I came in on run crew. I did that for a couple of years. I was a crew head for a couple of years, stage supervisor. I was like the crew head, and then ATD. Yeah, that's where I'm at now.
Cool.
Awesome. Well, I'm really excited to have all of you. Obviously, a lot of different experience doing lots of things. I think one of the items that these seminars really help our audience with, I think, and it's something that I really look forward to, is a deeper understanding of what we mean by these different positions. Like, we say words and people, they may have an image in their head that's not really what it is to do this different kind of work. So I really want to take a moment and just define what it is to be on the run crew, specifically at the festival, but just in general terms, what are we talking about with stage crew, run crew? Sometimes we hear stage hand. What does that mean? So I'm gonna kind of throw it out there a little bit, but I want to pinpoint what it means to be a stage crew member at the festival, and then maybe we'll expand it a little bit to be like, what other things does that relate to? So and I think it's evolved a little over time too. So I'm gonna start with our our earliest member, Ben. Can you tell me what it meant to be a stage crew member at the festival, like in 1995?
Sure. Thanks for the sleight of hand of calling me old, but that's okay.
No.
So when I came in on Run Crew, it was really focused more towards the scenic and properties element for Run Crew. There was Run Crew for scenery props, for lighting, for sound, and they were all very separate crews. And I was on the scenic props end of things. And what that meant was really we kind of came in late. At that phase of the festival in terms of the build. So carpenters and actors and everybody else had been there for, 4 or 5 weeks at that point. And then the run crew came in later on, just before, about 2 weeks before preview and opening weeks. And then, so we were integrated right away in really starting to set up scenery, and bring over props and everything else into the 2 theaters there at the time, Adams and the Randall. And so we were involved in all the changeovers from one show to another through all the rehearsal process. Sometimes we were rehearsing a different show in the afternoon than we were in the evening, and we would have to do a full changeover of the theater between the 2. And then we were also doing strike, so late at night, schedules were a little crazy. It wasn't unknown to me for 16, 18-hour days sometimes. And I always tell the students that I work with now that if you really want to know that you're going to do theater for the rest of your life, try running summer stock, because it will tell you, it will guarantee that you're going to do theater for the rest of your life if you can put up with that. So that was kind of what we did coming in on Run Crew. But we were also integrated in running all the shows. And so, any of the scenic shifts that would happen backstage, tracking props, sometimes tracking actors, making sure that Fred got from one side of the stage to the other side of the stage. That was one of my very first jobs was tracking Fred Adams for Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum. It was one of my favorite jobs, actually, that I've ever done. So that was kind of what we did.
Awesome. So Kate, you've worked most recently here. Just in contrast, is there anything that's different about the Run Crew now, based on what you understand Ben explained there? Anything that maybe got left out, or you want to add to that?
Yeah. So Ben covered a lot of it. Yes, we move a lot of scenery. We track things. There's a lot of choreography in doing Run Crew, though. Everybody has to know their place and know where they need to be at a certain point. We do everything from prep food to do prop maintenance, clean prop guns, move scenery into the right spot. We set all the magic, like for Mary Poppins' bag, that has to be done beforehand. We have to make sure that everything runs like a well-oiled machine by the time the show opens. We handle emergencies, they do arrive, they show up, but we handle them hopefully gracefully and with ease. And yeah, I think, everybody has to play their part and do their part of the choreography to make a well-oiled machine and make the show run smoothly.
Very cool. Chee, I think both you and Kate said, I think maybe you worked as interns at one point or another, and that's sort of a unique part of the Run Crew here, where there's Run Crew, there's people in leadership roles, but then there's this sort of intern component. Can you talk a little bit about the difference there, and like what maybe additional duties are a part of that, or what it was additionally a part of doing sort of intern in scenery or props?
Yes. I came in as a carpenter intern in 2008, the year that you had left. And I came in early at the beginning of the build season. And from day one, we were included in talks about the build. We were shown and educated on how to build the way they built in USF. And then we were further educated in maintaining and building through other carpenters and master carpenters and ATDs and TDs that came from across the country. And then we would transfer over to the Run Crew. I couldn't remember the exact time, but usually around a week before the tech process started. And we would start to learn how to work with the crews that had just come in to transfer over to one unit so that we could all put the show together, run it, and change it over. And then as far as my duties as intern through the summer was, you were expected to know how to fix the pieces that you worked on and then transfer that knowledge to the rest of the shows you worked on. And throughout the process of maintenance, keep those in tip-top shape and whatever else is required of you, which is a lot. But it's hard to explain. It's just, if it came up and you had some kind of knowledge in it, you did your best to try and fix it.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if people listening know, but most of the people that are part of the construction, the people that build it, the people that are the technical designers, our TDs, ATs, a lot of the people we've talked to in previous seminars, they all leave. And really there is a department head, maybe the scenery director or, props director is the only other person here. So in order to take care of all these shows, it comes down to these folks here to make sure all that stuff stays running. And they have to have a lot of the skills that the people who built, the scenery already, who have left behind, left pieces behind, they have to be able to fix that stuff. So, there's a lot that goes into it. And like Chee just said, like stuff comes up, Kate referred to emergencies, you gotta be able to address those as those come up and be ready and willing to do that. Michael?
I was just going to say, I think, just to be more specific, so just because it's built doesn't mean it's going to endure the rigors of a whole summer. So if a caster goes out, or all of a sudden you lose a piece of siding, or all of that, and the actual moving it in, moving it out, moving it in, that takes its toll too as well. And I've heard run crews say this before. Within that first week or so, well, we're going to have a problem with this piece for the next 6 weeks, right? And you can see that coming in, and then they go away, and then it becomes your job to have to take care of that. It's, which is why it's vital to have people who have the skill set to solve those problems as they do it, right? Yeah. Are there any examples that you can think of over your time? But go ahead.
Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead, Ben.
No, after you.
I was going to say, so during Mary Poppins, one time that the evil nanny, replacement nanny, goes out through under the staircase bookcase that folds out. And there's a little Shakespeare bust on the bookshelf, and they accidentally slammed the bookshelf too hard. So Shakespeare's head just went right off the shelf and shattered all over the floor. Whoops. But luckily the actors just played it off. They swept up the pieces and went on with the show. But later on, I had to sit there and glue Shakespeare's head back together again. And just a little fun fact between us, there's a little fake mustache inside Shakespeare's head now. So
Nice.
Yeah, it was 2 a.m.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
for sure.
Ben?
So I think one of the biggest audience pleasers is when the big battle scenes, right? You get people coming out with swords and whacking away at each other. Those things take an enormous amount of beating over the course of sometimes 40 performances. So part of my job in working as Adam's crew head was weapons maintenance. Let's see, fight master at that time, I think Robin McFarquhar, is that?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. He and I sat down one day, and he showed me exactly what to do with every single sword. And sometimes they were very, very different depending upon, this style or this style. And it was even different between actors. Some actors were really good at taking a hit. Some of them were really good at hitting. Each of their weapons were in different shapes. And it was my job to make sure that they were still fight worthy on stage and safe is the biggest part there. I do remember having to work with Ben Homan. One of the swords really took some damage in one of over the course of the summer. We ended up having to replace the blade, and so that's the kind of maintenance that you have to do that a lot of people don't think about. That backstage maintenance stuff.
Yeah,
it's huge. We have one question that I think is apropos right now from Tanya. And this relates to sort of what is stage crew and run crew like outside of USF. Can you tell us what a flyman is, Chee? And then maybe just touch on like how running a show, say on the road, is different than running a show at the festival.
I'll generalize it as best I can. As a flyman, we are on the fly rail, which is a rope pulley system that varies from house to house, from show to show. That is way more detailed. And I have less knowledge in explaining the differences and all that than say Richard would be able to. But as a flyman, we are expected to move the pieces into the air or out, onto the deck from a rigging system set up, whether it's a heavy piece of scenery or lights or whatever it may be that has been put in the air. That's what we do as a flyman on a show. Now, if you're talking about what a flyman on the road does, again, I'll generally explain what that is I'm expected to be a carpenter, a rigger, and a flyman, all under one title. So I'll come in, I'll set up the rigging, then I'll have a crew, a union crew usually with where I'm working now. They'll come in, they'll put up all the motors and hang everything for me. Once that's set, I leave them to do what they're professionals at. Then I move on to the next job, which is to make things fly, whether it's drapes, whether it's scenery, whether it's lights or not. Then I'll work with the local fly rail and their labor of brick lifters, and we'll get that all situated safely as best we can. And then once that's all situated, or at the same time, usually with how things are working now, I will also be leading a crew building scenery while I'm doing all of those jobs. That's what Flyman on the Road does these days.
Cool. So that kind of rolls into I think what a lot of people think of for run crew, especially the festival, is changeovers. The sort of process of essentially building, striking over and over again, so that our patrons, when they come to see our shows, they can see multiple shows in a short period of time. So can we talk a little bit? It's hard to like really generalize it. And we had a Rep Magic seminar, so if anybody wants to go back and see that, that kind of explains it a little bit in detail. But what's the responsibility, let's say, of run crew or the crew head to change over scenery? What is that like? Ben, can you jump on that? Because it's different from theater to theater too. So maybe talk about what it was like in the Adams. Or
sure. Usually in rotating rep, this was true for me, was Monday and Thursday were the same. Tuesday, Friday, Wednesday, Saturday. It was sort of that rotation of shows through there. And so if you've got an evening show, an afternoon show, you've got to change over the entire theater basically between those two shows. And so you may have a sort of mid-afternoon to evening changeover coming out of the matinee into the evening show, depending upon if you're in the Adams, it was really just evening shows due to the nature of that outdoor space. So you'd come in typically early in the morning because that courtyard was an open space and we had a lot of other events happening on green show stages, the Seminar Grove, all of that stuff. And so, they didn't want to hear a bunch of run crew in the background banging on scenery and hollering at stuff during that. So we'd either come in real early in the morning or sort of later in the afternoon when things just before we got going for evening shows. I think one of the biggest differences that I noticed between the Randall and the Adams was the modularity that had to be there for scenic element, especially for the Adams. everything had to come in through those side gates, and so, it was like 3 feet wide. It was pretty tall, but it was only 3 feet wide. So everything had to fit through those side gates. Whereas in the Randall, we could have these sort of massive rolling wagons, and that's part of part of the fun is playing this huge game of Tetris in the Randall backstage of, we got to move this one up here, and then it's got to slide over so this other one can slide down and come in. So that's sort of this idea of the changeover between shows. But for us, it also included, all the props had to be loaded back into props cabinets and rolled, and new props cabinets loaded out, and all the props tables loaded up with everything, so that it was at a moment's notice to be gotten by the actors.
All right, cool. I have this image of Chee rotating this spiral staircase we had. I think that's right. It was bigger than the gate, and so we had this. Yeah. Do you remember that one? The cart.
It was the T2000 Rotary stair drive. Yeah. We invented it in 2000. That was the brainchild of Jerry Giannacchio. We figured out that due to the detail of that circular staircase, it could not come apart. The railing and the stairs and everything had to be one solid unit. And we figured out we couldn't come in the courtyard side. We had to roll that thing all the way around to the far side of the Adams, and it had to be corkscrewed through. And so we ended up with like these 2 big pins on carts that went into either end of the circular staircase, and it rolled through the gate. It was crazy.
Yeah, it's cool. But that's one of those things where it's like this element was designed, constructed in a certain way, and then some creativity and a lot of elbow grease from our run crew to make it work, and it was always sort of there's some discovery there and a lot of ingenuity and perseverance, a lot of perseverance to get those things done. So as far as changeovers and how how they sort of have changed, maybe Kate, with the Ingolstadt, you got to open that theater, right? As well as the Ains, you got to be part of the first season. So, but prior to 2016, we didn't have the Ains theater. So I'd love for you to touch on that. And then also a little bit about the Ingolstadt and how, and how you see if it similarities that you might see there or anecdotally between that and the Adams. Can you touch on that for changeovers?
Yeah. So I didn't work a whole lot in Ingolstadt, but I definitely was part of the new season, the opening season. But like Ben said, there's so much innovative, creative thinking, and you have to think spatially. You have to think about Tetris, and you have to think, if these pieces slide over, where can they go? Or how can they fold together to make some other space? You have to be conscious of the fact that people will be changing backstage, so you have to make room for them. You have to leave that space open, and wardrobe racks and all those sorts of things. In terms of how it might be different, the Ains is a very small space in terms of the backstage area. So it's about utilizing the space you have within being on stage. Trying to create a backstage or, offstage spaces, and definitely utilizing scenery to its fullest capacity. In the Ingolstadt, you have the opportunity to have 2 different levels of storage space, which I don't know if that was the case in the Adams, where you have ish. There are some definitely there are some constraints. Oh my gosh, with the Ingolstadt, the double doors and fitting all the props and scenery through a smaller loading dock door. That was something new. When opening the Ingolstadt, everything was new. Everything was new for everyone. So yeah, learning to think on your feet, especially during changeovers and rep magic. That was huge for us.
Cool. Yeah, and there's a lot of creativity there, and just to add another level to it, and something we don't deal with quite as much now. This is a historical component of the festival. Brain stage. I would love to get some feelings about Rain Stage. And now it evolved over time. And for patrons who've been with us for many years, you'll know about our matinees that we used to do in the auditorium theater. You'll know about if we had rain in the Adams, we would, if it was really heavy, we'd move things inside. Chee, can you talk to us a little bit about your experience with Rain Stage? What is it? And what does
I'll
it mean to the Run
pick
Crew?
the first emotion, hate, when it comes to rain. That's the first emotional word that comes to mind. Rain stage for me was another stage that I just had to build because that's what was needed for the eventual call that we would transfer it inside from outside. It was, I believe, 6-7 size smaller. I can't remember the exact number, but it was just a little bit smaller from the normal stage outside. So everything didn't quite fit right. So that was my immediate thoughts, is how much I disliked it. Why didn't everything just fit right? Because it's an exact replica of the stage that was just a little bit smaller. So everything that was built to proper size should come inside and fit properly. That's not how it works. Rain stage was a dreadful memory. We all had to deal with it. I was there for 4 seasons, and every season it was the same. We would set up the outside stage, then we would set up the inside stage. Besides the pre-tech process of building the rain stage, that's its own thing. I don't know how to explain that well. We
Leave some stuff for Ben.
yeah. I'm glad that other people have not had to deal with this, but I'm sure Ben and I have the same thoughts about it. It was a very trying period because it's also the rain stage was at that time in the Adams shop. So we had to share space. We had to think about that. And if we had to do repairs, we had to do it in the shop, which is also the backstage, which is also a numerous bunch of other things for the university. So that was, in a nutshell, my thoughts about the rain stage.
Copy that. Ben, anything to add to that?
Yeah, yeah. I have in my life developed an appreciation for dry socks. Dry socks make everything just a little bit better after a long wet evening. So Chee's absolutely right. The rain stage was just a little different. It was sort of a mock-up, if you will, of the Adams that existed in that auditorium space in there. And I remember we did some matinees in there as well. I think it was Wednesday, Saturday matinees that were in there. And so whatever show was in that rotational slot for the Adams did a matinee in that space as well. And so trying to make all of what the primary fit was for the Adams. And so the carpenters would build everything to fit the Adams. And then there was this period of adjustment to try and see if it could fit into the rain stage. And if not, what were we going to do? And I do remember that there were some things that just couldn't. Right. And so some things had to be sacrificed. So if we were going to move a show for rain stage, that this element just would not be part of the rain stage when we moved the audience in for that. And that was just, those were some of the hard decisions that were made by not run crew primarily, but, designers and directors, and saying this, we can still do the show without the specific element. I remember one thing, that rain stage, we tried to make it work for all of what the Adams scenic element would be. And I remember we did a version of Midsummer's. There were like giant bugs and stuff like that. And one of the things was the floor would open up in sort of like this great big fan thing, and it would be this backdrop. And so it was all hidden down into the stage deck, right? And it worked well for out in the Adams. We could put this platform over the top of it, and we had a crew member that was down underneath of the Adams stage. But to make that work, and I think Midsummer's was the matinee. We actually, the platform would fit in there, but we didn't necessarily have a great spot for the operator to make this fan thing work. And so I remember having to ask Lorenzo, one of my dear friends and crew members at that time. I was like, dude, I'm gonna need you to like lay under the platform for the whole show and open this fan at the appropriate time. And so there was one tiny little hole backstage that I could like peek through and see him like laying underneath, and he'd have like his book like right up against, because there was maybe this much room. It was literally just enough to slide Lorenzo in before the audience got in there. And then after the show, it was the only time that he could get in and out of there without being seen by the audience. And so he would lay under there for like 2.5 hours reading his book and open the fan when he was supposed to. So the rain stage was sort of its own special thing. The dreaded time of waiting for someone to call rain stage. You can hear the clouds and the thunder rolling off in the distance. I remember Joe Payne did a great sound design for King Lear, and just the subs were rumbling the whole theater, and the sound cue would go off, and then you would hear off in the distance the same sound cue, the rumble coming in over the valley there, and all the stage crew was back there going, oh God, here we go. I actually found it sort of wildly invigorating.
Yeah, but before we got on, we started to bring that up, and for history's sake, I want to make sure we get a lot of this in here too, because we're not going back. We're not going back to those days. But one of you was referring to Hamlet. I think it was you, Ben, where you moved in, you moved out, you moved in, you moved out, back forth, and the squeegeeing and how the courtyard would fill up with water. And also underneath the Adams stage. Talk a little bit about what a Southern Utah rainstorm does to the Adams Theater.
First off, it changes the dimensionality of the theater. And this was actually a really, really helpful thing in having me there with the carpenters in the Adams when they're building these things, that they would want to make them fit just right. And I was like, no, dude, you got to give me like a 1/2 inch extra over here, because this whole theater is going to swell up, literally swell up over the course of the summer. It's going to change dimensions when those summer monsoons hit. And sometimes it was, we get a little sprinkle and it was sort of gone. And then other nights it was like, the heavens would open and it's this deluge for 20 minutes. And we would have down there in the moat, like 3 inches of standing water. And the crews out there with giant squeegees, like pushing the water out into the courtyard to over by the drain. And all the audience is sort of packed up underneath of the eaves while we waited to see if we were actually going to move in. And the run crew would run out with these great big giant pieces of black plastic and roll it onto the stage to try and make sure that the water would roll off into the moat. And we'd all come out and roll the plastic when the rain stops, roll the plastic back up. We're out there with towels mopping off the floor. That was the best part, right? We'd clean up, and then the audience was like, that was awesome. Can we see that again? Right. And I think they got a kick out of it. But that one night with Hamlet, Hamlet's kind of already an epic journey, right? It's a long play. And so we moved into the auditorium, the rain stopped, we moved back out, the rain started again, we moved back in, and it was just this back and forth. I think it was midnight before the show got over, and the audience was not happy about the length of that kind of show. And I think that was the tipping point. There was a decision made that if we moved inside for rain, that we stayed inside. We finished the show inside, especially on some of those longer performances.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Wow. Anybody else? Chee, you have anything to add to that?
No, just rubbing my eye.
Yeah. So things are different now, Kate. Thankfully,
I'm so thankful we don't do the rain stage.
But it's still outdoor theater. Are there things that that are similar that you've experienced, had to deal with, had to jump in and help out with?
Definitely. When the rain starts and people are on deck, it's like a herd of cattle, just go at it with mops and buckets and everything, especially during a performance. We do, in terms of like on the off days when the show is not happening, or during the day when the shows are not happening, we try and put up the tarp, especially in the Ingolstadt like, because it just funnels right down into on stage. And the painters try and protect things as much as possible, of course, with, coats of polyurethane and whatnot. But things do change. They swell, they, decrease, everything. So you have to account for all types of weather in that area.
Cool.
I'm grateful. I remember those days of everyone trying to huddle underneath what little coverage you have out there. So I'm grateful that the Ingolstadt architects, and they talked about this in the design, they needed to make sure that everyone could be in protection of rain. Not necessarily in the seats. We still got the drip line. You can still pay a lot of money to get rained on. Cheaper seats, not so. But as patrons all clear out, so that everybody can stand and wait for those 20-minute monsoon storms to pass. But yeah, come a long way, baby.
So shifting gears a little bit, now that everybody knows all the excitement of Run Crew, I want to talk about, how you get into it, how you all prepared for it. Kate, I'd want to throw this one to you about, like, if there was some training that prepared you for Run Crew, what things, like, when you first came in, you really relied on in your experience with working with the festival?
So I'd say, one, that every show you do prepares you just that much more for the next show that you do. You can never have too much training, I think, in that regard. In terms of, like, of course, knowing your tools and knowing, some knowledge of doing Run Crew helps. But there are some people that are on Run Crew that have never done this before. Yeah, I think that it's important for them to learn, of course, at the beginning. And over the course of the summer, you see them evolve, in terms of educationally. They have some understanding of what they're doing by the time they leave. You never really know who you have when you get there. So I think it's really important to know your tools, know the space that you're kind of working in. But sometimes being green is okay too, Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, some of those less tangible skills, maybe, and maybe it's about, for me, I remember thinking about attitude of people and flexibility. A lot gets thrown at you, and a lot of times it is early in people's career, the first time they do this, so they don't know what to expect, and just being able to be available to that information and just kind of roll with it. People who can roll with it a little bit are more successful, I've noticed.
Like being flexible.
Yeah.
I would add to that work ethic. Most skills can be taught and assumed and learned over a course of time. But work ethic is one thing, and really wanting to make sure that you have an excellent product. That was something that was very important. It was communicated to all of the crew, is that the opening night show is going to be the same show that the closing night audience sees, and making sure that commitment. You might have one more show and this particular prop breaks or whatever. We're going to rebuild it. It doesn't really matter how much time or money. The audience expects to see that exact same show, and I think that the commitment to that work ethic is really important from my end.
Excellent point. Thanks, Ben. I just want to remind everyone who's watching us, if they'd like to, please put some questions in there, that if you have some curiosities about backstage work, and these folks have a lot of experience and could hopefully answer those questions really well. So please put some stuff in the comments on our Facebook page. Just sort of a follow-up to that, knowing what you leaned on when you came in, is there anything, Chee, I'm sending this one to you. What training do you wish maybe you had? Just like, if there was something that really would have made a difference that you wish you had known prior to coming to work at the festival? Anything?
I don't know, because at that time I consider Richard my first real teacher, because my teachers at college, I didn't listen to them as well as I should have. I did what every young kid does. I obviously we went to school, we paid to go to school, but I took what knowledge I wanted. I showed up to class when I wanted. I did what I wanted, and I was then told, once you graduate, I shouldn't say I was told, that I let myself be led to assume that once I graduated, I could get a job in this professional world that I'd spent 4 years or however many years you spent there. I could get a job there. So my first day with Richard at Utah was a real eye-awakening moment in my career choice, I guess. I thought I was ready. I was very wrong in that thought. Like it's like Ben and Kate said, work ethic, your attitude, rolling with the moments was what kept me in there. So I don't know how to express or explain that for what I think kids coming out should learn, because most kids that I've met throughout my career who've come out of school have a design degree who want to go straight into designing, and so the process and the understanding and all that has not caught up to their education. Whereas if you come out of school straight with an education, you have the know-how, but do you know how to get there then? And that's where I don't know how to explain what I would want to know, is the know-how to get there. Because great, I knew how to do this, but doing it with my actual hands in front of your boss and then their boss, and then them expecting professionalism and you to perform on the spot, like that takes something that a school can't explain. And I just don't know how to explain all that into one thing.
This is really good. That's really good, Chee. Richard, can we dive down this rabbit hole? Because I'm seeing both Kate and Ben nodding that, and I think that's something different about theater that people don't realize, that there's what you learn in school, and then what you really have to learn. And I've been told many times that Utah Shakespeare Festival is a really great process laboratory for learning from your peers, because you're not done. And in many ways, it's kind of like a journeyman, type of experience as you learn there. Ben, Kate, I think Chee really started us off really well there. Any comments on that? How do you train people when you get in there? You know everything, and then you find out that you do not know everything, and you're going to get a really, really great education as that happens. Ben, any comments?
So my career's taken a lot of weird left-hand turns in Albuquerque. My BFA was actually in performance. And I got hired at Utah Shakespeare. At the time, my technical director in college, I was working in the scene shop that day. It just happened to be my lab hour days. And I think it was Kelly Allison, who was the PM at that time, called up Charles and was like, hey, I need some folk for run crew. You got anybody? And Charles like hollers out in the shop, hey, Ben, you want to go work at Utah Shakes? And I was like, okay. And that's like how I started on this crazy journey. And so I would say be open. You never know where your career is going to take you. You never know what's going to come down the road. So be open for opportunities. Have a little bit of humility when those opportunities come by, that you can really look them in the eye and say, yeah, you know what, I know absolutely nothing about that, but I'm going to take it head on. And it's okay not to know. But as long as I think that you're willing to tackle it, you'll do well.
Cool. Kate?
I definitely agree with what both Chee and Ben are saying. Book smart is way different than like street smart, and doing it tangibly, whether that's being a flyman or casting and molding in the prop shop or building it with carpentry. It's that much more ingrained in you. You can learn it in a book all day long and have your teacher explain it to you, but for you to actually sit down and do it with your own hands really solidifies that education. I think that's the most valuable thing. And everybody comes in to run crew at a different level. We're all coming from all across the United States, so we're all getting some different knowledge. So trying to kind of piece that together and meld into one solid crew for the entire summer, that has some, upsides too.
Cool.
Yeah.
We've got a great question here, Richard, that I think kind of ties into this, and I'm going to let you answer I'm going to let them answer it, and then you can answer it since you're in a position here of hiring. Sarah asks, when a person with less experience, like a student, applies for run crew, what should they include in their application to make them stand out? Who wants to take that?
I'll speak first, I guess. I've worked at Utah in the early days when, in 2008, like that was one of my, I don't know how to explain experience, but it was not a good time at the beginning. Richard was transitioning out. We were short on crew. We were getting quality talent. We were getting inexperienced talent. I don't know how you would stand out. All I know is if you could put on there that you had good work ethic, that'd be great. But there's no way of explaining that you had good work ethic, because with good work ethic, you expect something else, and you show up and you work a 22-hour day, and then they say, "Great, we'll see you in 2 hours for another 22-hour day," and your ethics out the door because I'm tired, drained. How is this supposed to be what? Okay, I'm done. And so like that is a hard thing to put on something where your resume would stand out. I would say to stand out, be honest and just give what you are willing to do. But I don't know if you were able to put that on your resume.
Good. Kate or Ben, anything else?
I do a lot of like resume review with students, and one thing that I always tell them is don't be ashamed of any of the work that you ever do, whether it be community theater or high school. With an undergraduate, yes, of course, you're going to put your experience on there, and your experience thus far has been through either community theater or high school theater. Do not be ashamed of the work that you do. That is work. And I think that that's perfectly okay, and as your career develops, of course, yes, the more recent things, maybe professional work, is going to supplant some of that material that's already on your resume. And name dropping is okay, to a point. I can honestly say that on my resume, every job that I have ever gotten is because I have Utah Shakes on my resume, that it is a known name. And it's not just the name of the festival, but it's the people that you work with. That every job I've ever gotten, it's not that somebody has worked there before, or they know somebody, but some of that is true. The position that I'm in currently, that I heard through the grapevine that this job was open from my contacts that I developed at Utah Shakespeare. So once you get your foot in the door, really start to build that network. It is the thing that will keep you working in the long run, is not just your own work, but and the places that you've worked, but the people that you work with. And I think that that's a really important thing to know is Utah Shakespeare is not a theater. It's not a location. It's the people. And I always remember that USF is the people that I've worked with, for a decade there. And that's what I remember.
Kate or Richard, do you have any other last comments on if someone wants to apply, what they need to put or how they do it?
I would say that if they have the chance to show any pictures or things like that, in a portfolio situation, try and put things that you were creative with, were innovative with, and how did you solve this problem that, came up. Try and show your skills to the best of your ability, but also show that, you can make mistakes and you've learned from them. Again, Ben said, it's about the people. It's everybody who's worked with you, that's your reputation, so make sure you put your best foot forward and attitude. Mhm.
These are all really great perspectives. I'd add one thing about sort of telling a story about yourself. A resume tells one part, and your portfolio tells a part. I think there's an opportunity in an interview and in a cover letter to tell a story about where you are and where you're trying to get to. We're talking about probably many early career people, at least at the festival. There are plenty 20, 30, 40-year professionals that are running shows. I want to make sure people know that, like, there are people who have made an entire career out of doing backstage work. Chee is very close to that. I mean, he does a lot of that running stuff, and that's a career that he's made. But also the early career, which is a lot of what we use at the festival, you're not a fully formed human, right? When you come in early in your career. So I'm here, I want to get here. And maybe you see an opportunity at the festival to get you to another place. And for me, one of the things that was interesting to me when I was hiring stage crew, when I was the scenery director, was that person who saw an opportunity to develop, and they saw the festival as a part of that development for them. And so even if you've done a little bit and you're like, I know this, my teacher, as Ben said, I know this person. They talked about the festival, they talked about the people there and how I could learn from them, how I could be an extension of my learning by going there and having this laboratory to practice what I learned in the classroom. I can see the festival helping me do this and tell me a story about yourself and about where you're trying to get to. And that really clicks for me a lot of times, where I'm like, oh, okay, so this person's going to commit here because they know they have something to learn. They know they have a place to go, and I can be a part of that. Because one of the things that's really important to me, and I think all of the production heads here are really passionate about it, is we're teachers, we're mentors. We just have a different laboratory, we have a different classroom. And so it's really been a part of the festival, and how the festival functions is teaching people and helping them. It's really hard sometimes because we train people up and then they go off and they do all these great things, and we feel like you're like, oh, I lost this talent. No, it's so vital. We are a part of the food chain that is essential. I just, I'm sitting here, I'm looking at Chee and and Ben, people I've worked with and watched how they've grown and changed, and meeting Kate, that's a really important part of this for me personally. And I encourage you all to go ahead and say, this is what I know, this is what I don't know, put it out there, tell me who you are, because that's gonna grab my attention and hopefully get you a job.
Questions are starting to pop now.
Yeah.
We're going to do a quick one here. Trevor Long asks, what is the favorite sign or label you've ever put on a piece of scenery or a prop?
PG, please.
I don't know if I can repeat it fully in company. Basically hands off, but with way more colorful words. How's that?
Cool.
Anybody else?
Yeah, there's a rule.
No.
That it's not yours, don't touch it. But oh my gosh, people love to touch it, don't they?
Yeah. Here's another good one. I think that we've talked a little bit about training and stuff. And Tanya says, give me a skill that people might be surprised about for crew. We've talked a little bit about the training, but is there something that's like, whoa, I never thought that, but I need this all the time, or this is just really, really important, people might not realize?
My BFA in performance, being able to understand how to use your voice and your body, I think is incredibly important, especially when you take on a leadership role, in being able to assume control of a room, if you will. And that training that I received in undergrad, that skill, is something that I have used in many, many ways throughout my career so far.
I just want to answer this one. Oh, go ahead, Kate.
I was going to say my silly answer to that is my rotisserie chicken skills. Every show for Huckleberry Finn, or for the musical adaptation of Huckleberry Finn, Big River, I had to go get a rotisserie chicken every night, and became very good friends with the Walmart staff there in Cedar City. And I now use that chicken skill, I guess, in my own home. So
there's a lot of food prep that goes into, especially if you're on the props part of the crew. Yeah, you got to be able to make.
There's a lot of food prep.
Yeah. I want to answer this real quick from Lucinda. It sounds like the USF, that the past USF was willing to hire crew without specific college learning. Is that still the case? Absolutely. College is one vehicle to learn. Some people learn differently, and there's other ways that they can learn those skills. Maybe you left high school and did a lot. Maybe you went right on the road and did some things, or you did community theater. All those things are, to Ben's point, are legitimate experience, and they all brought you to where you are now and help in your process. So I would say yes.
And I want to echo and say amen to what Richard said earlier, is that not only are there entry levels on run crew here at USF, but there are people who have made entire careers being run crew. And you heard Chee talking about the union crews that he works with that are on run crew. So there's multiple levels within the run crew world. I actually think Claudia's question is a really great question for us to end on here. Do you have any examples of when things went wrong or when something went surprisingly right? I'm sure there's multiple examples of that too. Chee, you're smiling.
I can think of a lot of things that went wrong. Currently, like my last show was Once on This Island. I toured that show. It's a show set on an island on a stage. So we brought the entire island to the stage, and I could not think of anything else that could go wrong. Water, rain, sand, glass. I don't know. Like all the things that could go wrong with that.
Did it catch on fire?
So many things could go wrong. Luckily, everything went good, but some ideas in my head, practically, no, don't do that, please. It happens, and you go out there and it works, and then you're like, oh, okay, I was wrong.
Thankfully, right? Anybody else have anything for that question? Maybe even things you're really proud of that went right too?
So my very first year on Run Crew, we did Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum in the Randall, and it's still one of my absolute favorite shows, and it's because of that production. And one of the houses, so it's got three houses. There's the big middle one, and then there's these two side houses, right? And in one of the side houses, they did the whole Dutch door thing, right? And so it's the bottom half and the top half are separate, and of course nothing can ever go wrong with that, but the best part was that it was embraced by the director and by the actors, and it turned into this wonderful gag, this wonderful bit, right? And I, as the crew member for this, it was Brian Vaughn who was playing the character that had to like run into the top half while the bottom half was open, but then the bottom half closes, and then he does a flip over the top half into the house, and the Carps could not figure out a way, because Brian, I mean, he brings massive energy to everything that he does. It couldn't figure a way out to keep the dang door closed while he did the flip over the bottom one, because he'd hit it with his bottom half and roll over onto the pad on the inside. And they're like, well, Ben, you don't have a job right now during this sequence of the show. Can you just hold that door closed? And I was like, okay. So it's me laying in there, really, I've got the door with a little handle right here, and I was on headset so that I don't remember who the crew head was for that show, or for the stage manager was for that show, but I was on headset so that I could communicate back when Brian flips over and he lands on the pad. I go, you okay? He goes, yeah, I'm okay. And he runs up the door onto his next gag bit. And then, I tell SM that everything was okay. So something that could have gone just terribly awry was embraced, and it became this wonderful bit for the show.
Our festival stage manager, who's watching comments on Facebook, said she was a stage manager on that.
Was that you? Was that Tanya?
Man. Yeah, I guess so.
That was a long time ago.
It was her first festival production, it looks like. And Tanya also says, Kate the bed.
Yes.
So
yes. I was going to say in Othello, we had such a difficult time because I couldn't see the stage from where I was backstage. The bed travels nicely downstage, and so Tanya is talking to me over headset about how fast I need to crank the winch that's powering the bed. And me not knowing exactly where the bed is on the track. At first we were trying it and, me just cranking away, and I would hit the end of the track very loudly and just bang in front of everyone. And we finally got it down to a nice science that she would, say, slow down. And so I'd have to slow down and like a nice coast into the bed, at the end of the track. But that was challenging. Definitely something that could have gone way wrong. And we practiced it enough times that it was nice and pretty for the audience to see. So
yeah, part of the storytelling. Absolutely. You have to feel the music or feel the movement,
Yeah.
or you're part of the character of the piece. Great example of that. Well, we're getting close to the end, and I want to kind of give everybody a chance for any last thoughts or comments. It's been a really great conversation. I could talk to you all day, telling stories and just learning all about what's going on with you now. But Ben, do you have any last thoughts for us today?
No, I don't think, run crew is one thing, but, I think that when we look even at this small sampling right here, you look at the wide variety, where Utah Shakespeare takes people or keeps people. Ben Holman was my very first crew head. And that was, I won't say how many years ago. I'm not going to chuck him under the bus about that, but he's still there. And there's this huge commitment to what the festival is and what it brings to the community of Cedar, Southern Utah, but even, a broad scope. One of my favorite moments from Utah was in 2000 when Fred brought the Tony home, and we passed it hand to hand, and everybody, and somebody asked me, I'll be like, yeah, I'm a Tony winner. I won a Tony. You bet. I held that dang thing, and we had this great big thing, and there were, people sang on stage, and Christine Freza made it okay for me to sing on stage, and it was cool. And those are the kinds of experiences that I think stay with you in your career in the long run. It's not necessarily, this show was really, really cool, but it's these sort of this conglomeration of all these amazing experiences that you take with you, and that's what keeps you going.
Chee, any last thoughts?
No, Ben hit it pretty much. Like, it's more of the memories with the people that we spend our time there with. The show is kind of just blur. You remember specific details, but like they kind of just blur. But the people always, you remember faces, you remember specific incidents, memories. That's about it.
Yeah. Thanks. Kate?
I'd say, yeah, it's about the people you spend your time with there, and about everything you learn there about yourself, and about making friends with everybody. It will definitely hold a special place in my heart forever. Yeah, it's a great experience. Would recommend to anybody.
Awesome.
Well, we want to thank you. We want to thank you for all of those great years of work through very different times. Those are really, really fabulous times from those early days and to our present time. And without the run crew, again, we've been talking about this panel for some time, haven't we, Richard? I said we have to work and celebrate because the job is so huge, and I think also very unsung. And at the same time, as you've learned from Chee, Kate, and Ben, so important in the formation of the job and can take you just about anywhere. So we just want to thank you. Thank you for your time spent there and your time spent here now. Next week, we're very excited about who we're going to be having here within this seminar. We're going to be having a discussion with David Alan Stern. And David Alan Stern is actually a dialect coach that has worked on many, many films and has helped many recognizable names within the film industry, but we're going to be actually talking about original pronunciation. Many times the text in Shakespeare's text has a joke or a statement there that doesn't make much sense now, but when you hear it the way it was said back then, you understand why. We'll enjoy that conversation next week, but it won't be next week. It will be December 3rd. You're going to be eating turkey next week in some nice, safe place. And then when you're done eating that nice, safe eaten turkey, the week after is when we'll have that. So special thanks again to Brian Head and Cedar City Tourism Bureau for making these possible. And Richard, I just realized I jumped right into that closure. Do you have any final words for these wonderful people here? Do you have any final words?
Just to say thank you so much for all the years and all the memories. I think, the people, it's what brought me back. I was here, I left, and I came home. So that is probably the most important thing. So thank you all for that. And thanks for being part of this place.
Yeah. Thank you so much. We will see you later. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.